This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Good afternoon, Bob. Happy football season. Sam Pittman did a heck of a lot of talking yesterday, and you're usually in on the teleconference, on the pressers. I'm assuming that you listen to at least a piece of Sam Pittman live. Wednesdays are busy days for the head coach. There's a lot of talking to the public.
Yeah, that's one of the things about being a head coach, especially in a high-profile league like the SEC. You have a lot of media obligations and fan obligations. We know he spoke to fans, in Little Rock and up here in Northwest Arkansas last week. Of course, he's got the radio show, and like you say, he's got the SEC call. He does a teleconference with local media, or I guess other people get on there too. And I think everybody's probably tired of talking season, as Steve Spurrier so eloquently called it, and is ready for some football. I know we had a little bit last weekend and some good games on tap tonight. I know Florida's playing Utah, and I think Nebraska's playing Minnesota. Maybe there's some other games.
Yeah, Bob,
Minnesota, yeah.
Who are you excited to watch on this Arkansas team? Maybe a guy on the offensive side and a guy on the defensive side week one.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of new guys. I know offensive tackle probably in a real sexy position, and I don't know how much a challenge Western Carolina's defensive line can give them. But that Arkansas's got some offensive tackles out there, right? They got Patrick Kudus and Andrew Shanley maybe, and Devin Manuel. Young guys out there. I think they're pretty talented, and they're going to be pretty good, but I think it's good for them to get their feet wet against an FCS team. All due respect to Western Carolina, they're not having to play, Alabama or, like last year, Cincinnati, or 2 years ago had to play Georgia, right? And so, or 3 years ago, I guess it was. So, I'm interested to see those offensive tackles. And then on the defensive side, there's a lot of newcomers. I guess I want to see how a lot of the new guys in the secondary, how the safeties. Al Walcott, transferred from Baylor, Snacks Johnson, he's going to be playing nickel, it looks like. You got some new corners out there, too. So I'm curious to see how the guys in the secondary, because we know that was a problem area for Arkansas last year. And Western Carolina's a team that likes to pass the ball a lot, and their coach, Kerwin Bell, the old Florida coach, he made it pretty clear, the old Florida quarterback, I should say, he made it pretty clear they're not going to back down. They're not going to try to milk the clock or shorten the game. They're going to come out firing on all cylinders, if they can.
One of the themes, I think, throughout camp was that the team really wasn't dealing with too many injuries that would cause players to miss games. And then last night, you hear Jashad Stewart probably not going to play, Brady Latham questionable, Malik Chavis questionable. And I guess out of all of those positions, the one that it's not worried about, but the one that stands out is Brady Latham, because he's one of the returners of the offensive line. He is a team captain. I know they feel good about Amari Wiggins, who probably slides into that guard position, but man, I was kind of hoping you'd have your offensive line completely intact, but it sounds like at least on the left side, there's a little bit of iffiness as to who's available and who will be out there.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And, of course, Sam says he feels pretty good about 8 of those guys. So I guess they obviously like to get to 10, so they're too deep everywhere. But, if Brady Latham's out, then Bo Limmer's the only returning starter. And, of course, he's at a new position, center. Now, he played center in the bowl game and got a whole bunch of reps because that game went triple overtime, and he's had spring and fall camp to get used to it. But, also, obviously, they need those guys back. Anybody that's banged up a little bit, you don't want to take a chance on them aggravating the injury. You got Kent State coming in, and more importantly, you got BYU, and then the SEC schedule starts. And so, camp, Sam Mbake, one injury is too many, right? And they lost Sam Mbake for the season. But if you look around the country, you see, unfortunately, guys getting lost for the year. It's just part of the deal with football. It's a very physical sport. Even in practice, a lot of times guys tear up their knee and no contact injuries, right? Their cleat gets caught on the turf or something. So I think they came out of camp pretty healthy, considering they want to be physical and and get everybody ready. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, if there's anybody that you think isn't 100%, probably a good idea to hold them out.
Bob, KJ, what I see on film when you're seeing the highlights now, I haven't got to see any camp, and I'm looking forward to seeing him Saturday. He looks the part, man. He looks big. He looks strong. He looks healthy. Last year he had 2,600 yards passing and a little over 600 rushing. What are some reasonable numbers? What are some numbers you think that he can put up this year?
Well, he might have, it kind of depends on obviously what how the defense plays. I mean, you take what they give, and we know KJ can run the ball, but I would expect him to maybe in this offense and with the receiver, I think they're going to be better at tight end, and we'll see what happens with the receivers, but he seems to be connecting with them pretty well, so I think maybe hitting close to that 30 touchdown pass range. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic.
Ooh, I hope so, Bob.
Maybe closer to 3,000 yards. And keep those interceptions down. He had a great. He's had a great touchdown interception ratio. He really takes good care of the ball for the most part. And of course, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Western Carolina, but ideally for Arkansas, though, they'll get off to a good start, which has been an issue. That's going to be another thing to watch for: is do they get off to a good start? Because they've struggled, as Sam would say, in some of these games against the non-logo teams, and he put Arkansas in that category too. He talked about the logo teams are like Georgia and Alabama and LSU, and but we know Arkansas was trailing Missouri State late in that game last year, and we know that Sam's very first, not very first game, but the first season, non-COVID season, they struggled against Rice before they put them away. So. They lost to Liberty last year, which Liberty was a pretty good team, of course, with Hugh Freeze. But ideally, Arkansas will get off to a good start. They'll be firing on all cylinders. They'll be able to play a bunch of guys, and KJ, will be able to watch a good part of this game from the safety of the bench.
Bob, we've gone into this offseason, be like, well, this is an experienced team. Look at all of the transfers that were starters or guys that got a lot of run at their previous spot. And come to find out, there are more than a handful of freshmen that are going to play. I mean, true freshmen on defense. Offensively, you got a couple of wide receivers that have cracked the top 6. Luke Haas is listed as the top tight end. 2 linebackers, 2 defensive linemen, 2 defensive backs that Sam mentioned yesterday that are true freshmen that he expects to get some run. We know that they've recruited well. I did not expect that this many true freshmen would crack the depth chart. And truthfully, I don't think they're just listed there. I think we're going to see these guys.
Well, especially we know that freshmen can play 4 games and keep their red shirt. And then I honestly don't know if this waiver carries over, but I think with all guys opting out of bowl games, they'll probably do a waiver where if a freshman's played in 4 games, he could keep his red shirt and play in the bowl game. But yeah, some of these freshmen you'd expect to be in the rotation all year if they stay healthy. And some of them, maybe this is a game they get to play in it, but it might be one of those 4 games that they can play and keep their red shirt. It really depends on how the game goes. I mean, bottom line is Arkansas has got to go out and take Western Carolina very seriously and try to jump on them and take the fight out of them and discourage them, and then they can get some of their backups in there. But it does sound like Sam Pittman likes the depth. He's talked about playing some offensive line. I mean, you usually rotate defensive linemen anyway, especially when it's going to be hot like it is. And they feel good, I think, that they can rotate 2 lines, maybe even 3 on the D line and rotate some DBs. And it's not, you usually don't see rotating offensive line that much. You see the starters in there, and then if you feel like, okay, you got the game under control, you work some other guys in there, maybe you can play the second line. But it sounds like Sam feels good that there's enough competition at some of those spots that he's going to maybe, play a guy. And he wasn't exact about this, and I could be wrong, but maybe you play this group, 2 or 3 series, and then maybe you work 1 or 2 guys in to see how they do. Because you really can't give a guy a fair evaluation as a starter unless you got him in there with the starter. So to me, if you feel like you got 2 guys that are pretty even and you want to see how they do in a game, you got to give them both some reps with the starters.
Bob, have you made a prediction? Do you have a prediction? How do you see this Hog football season just as far as the wins and losses going this year?
I have not done a prediction. I mean, my feeling is, and here's the deal, I really like Arkansas's roster. I think they got a lot of good players. I really like the coaching staff. I think Sam, no offense to some of the other guys, but I think they probably upgraded in some spots on the coaching staff. I think Sam's done a very good job as head coach, given what he inherited. The issue with me and the Razorbacks is almost always the schedule, which is brutal a capital.
Yeah.
And so people may not want to hear this. I think 7-5, 8-4. And I get they could go 10-2 or something if everything just fell right. But given the strength of the schedule, I think 7-5 would be a good record. I know fans don't want to hear that and all this kind of stuff, but I look at the games, and of course there can be games that we think they're going to win that they'll lose, and there can be games that we think they're going to lose that they'll win. But as usual with Arkansas, really this is pretty much everybody in the SEC, maybe taking out Alabama and Georgia. And I'll say this: Georgia's got for them, they have a ridiculously weak schedule. It's not all on them because they're supposed to play Oklahoma, and then with Oklahoma coming in the league, they had to change that game, and they replaced them with Ball State. It's not their fault. Georgia Tech has not been very good. But if you look at Georgia's schedule compared to Arkansas' schedule, I think there's a pretty big difference. And Georgia is going to beat probably almost everybody they play anyway. They don't have to play Alabama or LSU. But getting back to Arkansas, I just think it's a real tough schedule. There's going to be a lot of close games, and last year they lost. We all know they lost 4 games by 9 points before they won the triple overtime game in the bowl over Kansas. So they need to turn that around. They need to at least win half of it. Like if they're going to play 4 or 5 real close ones, they need to go 3-2 or 2-2. And if they do that, I think they have a pretty solid season. But I see 7-8 wins, and I don't mean that as any knock on Arkansas. Like I say, I really like their roster. I like the coaching staff. I don't like the schedule.
That's fair enough. I see them going 4-0, Phil, in non-conference, and if they could go 4-4, 3-5 in conference, that gets you to your 7 or 8 wins.
The key is finding a place to get a win on the road, or maybe 2. And I think Florida's one place
would it be
you
nice
can do it
to win in the swamp?
And it would be great to find a way to win either at Ole Miss or at LSU. You can pull off a game against A&M. I don't know. But it is that 4-game stretch that seems to be, I think, the toughest in the country. Toughest 4-game stretch for anybody in the country. And it's not just because of the opponents. It's because you're spending a full month away from your home stadium. I mean, you only have 2 of your first, 6 games that are inside your home stadium this year.
Yeah, it's just that those first 4 SEC games, to me, I mean, I haven't done the research, but I cannot imagine Arkansas has ever played a tougher first 4 conference games in their history because of who you're playing and where you're playing them.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.